Hi, I'm Senator Scott Wiener, and I want to thank Vis Valley Community Unity for having me virtually with you tonight, and for the work that you do to unify Vis Valley, an incredibly diverse community, an amazing community. And so thank you for working to bring everyone together because we all share the same desire to have the best neighborhood possible. And I look forward to the day when we can all physically be together, perhaps at Raymond Street or elsewhere, and celebrate as a community when this pandemic is over. It has been a deep, deep honor to represent Vis Valley and the entire 11th Senate District in the California State Senate for the last 4 years. During that time, I have worked day and night, 7 days a week, to represent our community and to bring our values to Sacramento. I have been able, through the work of not just me, but our supporters and my staff, we've been able to pass 42 bills into law, tackling some of the hardest issues facing our state, including housing or our lack of enough housing, including trying to find effective solutions to homelessness to help people get off the streets, expanding access to mental health and addiction care, not just for those who are homeless, but for everyone, because it's a struggle that affects all communities. We've been able to pass legislation to protect immigrants and to push back against Donald Trump and his deportation machine, to protect our LGBTQ community, and to tackle climate change by expanding clean energy in the state of California. I've also worked extremely hard and authored legislation to make it easier for people, in particular seniors, to sign up for CalFresh for food benefits because it is way too hard now. It has been a hard 4 years. We have a lot of big problems in the state of California around housing and all of the other challenges that we have. But this federal administration has made our life harder. And so I have been one of the strongest and loudest voices in opposition to Donald Trump and the damage that he is inflicting on this society. I have also worked extremely hard over the last 7 months to help our community respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. As soon as the pandemic hit, I and my amazing staff began working very hard, 7 days a week, to support the community, to make sure that people could access unemployment benefits, to ensure that people could access food benefits, to help people who were facing potential eviction. We've worked with small businesses that are concerned that they may not have a future, small businesses perhaps whose landlords are not being cooperative with them. So I have focused and worked on the biggest issues facing our state, and I have focused and worked with members of this community to help individuals or businesses who are struggling. This is my life's work. I have lived in San Francisco and worked and been part of this community for 23 years. This is my home. This will always be my home. And representing the people of this amazing community is the honor of my life. And I would be honored to have your support in my bid to be reelected and to be rehired as your senator for another 4 years. Thank you and have a wonderful, wonderful evening.
Everyone, my name is Jackie Fielder. I'm a candidate for state senate here. Thank you to Visitacion Valley Community Unity for putting this together and to everyone for tuning in. I'm excited to have this opportunity to speak directly to Vis Valley. My campaign director is a lifelong resident of the neighborhood, and we launched my campaign in her living room in Argonaut. One of the biggest challenges facing Visitacion Valley is disinvestment. For decades, this neighborhood has been neglected and underserved. When it comes to transit, the 15 was lost in favor of the T, which is incredibly slow and just doesn't serve the neighborhood well or connect to BART. And the community was waiting years and years for affordable housing at the Chalet's lock site. Basic utilities like high-speed internet still aren't available, and basic infrastructure isn't being maintained. Residents also often lack travel to long distances to get essential needs like groceries or other services. And California ranks among the bottom in the nation for per student spending, and neighborhoods like Viz Valley are among the hardest hit by education disinvestment. For the past several years, I've been combating disinvestment as a founder and lead organizer of the San Francisco Public Bank Coalition. A public bank would give us control over our finances and allow us to invest in public transit infrastructure and small businesses, and build affordable housing more cheaply by slashing interest rates. Last year, we successfully passed Public Bank Bill AB 857, and we're currently working to establish both a citywide public bank and a state bank as the engine of economic recovery. Since the onset of the coronavirus pandemic and sheltering in place, my campaign has also distributed thousands of bottles of hand sanitizer at several locations in Visitacion Valley. As state senator, I have a platform to redress decades of disinvestment. My California Homes for All plan would raise $100 billion in new revenue for affordable housing like the Schley's Lock site. My transportation plan would dedicate funding mechanisms to keep transit operation and ensure equity. My education plan, which is endorsed by the California Teachers Association and the United Educators of San Francisco, defends and expands precious education spending. My COVID recovery platform lays out concrete steps to support workers, families, small businesses, and more. And you can read more on my website at JackieForSenate.com. I am proud to have the support of California teachers, the chair of the San Francisco Democratic Party, a majority of the school board, the Affordable Housing Alliance, neighborhood groups, environmental groups like the California Environmental Justice Alliance Action Fund, the Center for Biological Diversity Action Fund, and Sunrise Bay Area, as well as the co-founders of Black Lives Matter. California has the 5th largest economy in the world. We have the resources to do better. Now we need the leaders with the courage to do better. I hope you join our campaign for fundamental change. To show your support, visit JackieForSenate.com/sign and request one of these signs delivered to your door.
Hi, my name is Matt Alexander, and I'm a teacher, school leader, and community organizer. I'm running for school board because SFUSD has a compelling vision of high-quality learning, but it's not yet a reality for all of our children, especially Black and Brown students, immigrants, and students with learning differences. This opportunity gap is one of the key challenges facing the public schools serving Visitacion Valley, which have higher teacher turnover rates and lower levels of resources than many other schools in the city. Now, with the pandemic moving schools online, the situation is even more difficult. I've spoken with parents who are struggling to support their children because school staff do not speak their language, and other parents who have to work and can't effectively support their kids with distance learning. To address this crisis, we need school board members who understand our communities and value the voices of the people who do the work in schools and classrooms. I started my career as a public school teacher at Balboa High School in 1996, so I've known families from Viz Valley for the last 25 years. In the early 2000s, I helped lead a community organizing effort among teachers, parents, and youth in Viz Valley and nearby neighborhoods, which led to the founding of June Jordan School for Equity in 2003. I taught at June Jordan, and then I spent 10 years as the school's principal, during which time we built a strong track record of positive outcomes for Black and Latinx students and students with special needs. Many of our students lived in Viz Valley, and we partnered with educators at El Dorado, Little Viz, and Big Viz in different ways to build more connections and support within the neighborhood. We also worked with other community institutions. For example, one summer, River of Life Church led an innovative summer school program for June Jordan students. I left my role at June Jordan School 2 years ago, and now I work as a community organizer with Faith in Action, where I fought for housing for low-income seniors, and I've led campaigns to get people released from ICE detention and to protect SFUSD families from eviction. If I'm elected to the school board, my priority will be representing the voices of communities like Viz Valley, which all too often get overlooked in San Francisco. One way that happens in SFUSD is through the budget. I will fight to increase funding at the classroom and school level, not the central office, and to spend more resources in schools serving low-income students, immigrant students, and students with special needs. This funding will allow us to decrease class size, increase support for teachers, and reduce teacher turnover. More immediately, increased resources will allow schools to take the steps needed to open in person safely with smaller classes, better ventilation, and frequent COVID testing, prioritizing younger kids, low-income students, and students with special needs. To me, neighborhoods like Viz Valley represent the soul of San Francisco. I believe that if we work together, this crisis actually gives us the opportunity to strengthen our public schools and make them the centerpiece of a San Francisco that truly reflects the progressive values this city stands for. I would be honored if you would join me in that effort.
Hi, my name is Kevin Bogus. I'm a candidate for the school board here in San Francisco. I'm excited to be answering these questions for Visitacion Valley Community Unity. From my perspective, as someone who grew up here in San Francisco, I think the biggest issues facing the Visitacion Valley community are really centered around jobs and investment. I feel like we need more jobs that pay a living wage here in San Francisco, especially for folks who live in the southern part of the city. And I'd especially highlight Visitacion Valley and the neighboring communities there. Um, as someone running for school board, I definitely view our school system as playing a role in helping to solve that problem. If elected to the school board, one of the things that I would work hard to do is ensure that our schools are preparing our young people to graduate ready for college or a career that'll pay them a living wage. I think another thing we have to be aware of now is just because of the astronomical cost of living here in San Francisco, what are we as a school district doing to help employ families and young people while they're still in school? And really trying to do more to expand on the existing offerings in the city and really figure out how the school district can really pick up a little bit more of the slack to help people out through these really difficult times. Uh, for me, my day job is with Coleman Advocates for Children and Youth, which is a nonprofit organization that works on educational equity issues in San Francisco. I've worked there for the last 10 years, and through that work, I've been able to do a lot to advocate to bring more resources to Visitacion Valley community and the entire southern part of San Francisco, which has historically been under-resourced compared to the west side when it comes to schools. So one of my commitments is to continue that work as a board member and really transform the dynamic so that families feel that no matter where they send their child to school, they'll get access to the best education San Francisco has to offer. And that we'll be working hand in hand with families as well as the surrounding communities to ensure that the great things that are happening in our schools are also happening in the communities that are surrounding them. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Michelle Parker. I'm a parent leader, advocate, and organizer and have been active in the SFUSD community for about 15 years. I have 3 children who have attended our public schools since kindergarten, and I believe in the possibility and power of our public education system to strengthen communities, to create a healthy democracy, to end ignorance and hate, to disrupt systems of oppression, and to improve economic mobility. I want our schools to help our students learn how to be critical thinkers who can solve problems facing their communities. Visitacion Valley has been dubbed the Forgotten Valley. It has one of the lowest average household incomes and is one of the most diverse neighborhoods in our city, and many of our students are regularly exposed to trauma. The neighborhood is also going through drastic changes in populations and culture. Students in Viz Valley schools have not been afforded the same opportunities as their peers across the city, and that's not okay. For example, last year at Viz Valley Middle School, only 26% of students met grade level standards in English language arts, and 12% met them in math. 2 years ago, only 13% of our African American students were proficient in reading. This is because the systems and the adults running those systems have not done enough to support our students. We, the people who are setting the policies and allocating the resources, must do better. I know that there are valiant efforts happening to improve literacy for Viz Valley students, to create learning spaces that facilitate culturally responsive teaching, to employ more project-based learning and connection making to prepare our young people for college, career, and civic life. This is wonderful, and we have much more to do. We must approach this with urgency. We must unite our city to invest in these young people. Over the past several years, I have worked on several challenges facing this community. As board president of the arts education nonprofit that works primarily with Black and Brown students all across San Francisco, I've helped young people find their voice through self-expression and the arts, as well as supported the integration of anti-racist instructional practices in all of our classrooms. I have helped parents learn how to advocate for their children through my work on the district PTA, where I lead all our advocacy work and trainings. I serve on the LCAP task force for SFUSD, where we dig deep into the data about how well our students are doing and communicate this with the public. I've advocated for equitable use of district funds that prioritize students experiencing an opportunity gap. As a school board member, I will invest in more programs that meet the needs of families so that students do not need to go to other schools to access the language programs and academic services they want. I will also work with DCOAF to bring more sports and after-school programs to these schools, such as expanding the First Tee Golf program, and look into bringing tennis, basketball, track and field, and other programs to engage our youth. I will also fund mental health services, social workers, psychologists, and community health workers through San Francisco Unified's multiple tiered systems of support, and make sure we are integrating trauma-informed practices in our schools and in the community. I look forward to working with Visitacion Valley Community Unity and all the nonprofits that you represent and serve this community so that it is or doesn't feel forgotten again.
Hi, Community Unity folks. My name is Mark Sanchez. I'm the president of the Board of Education in San Francisco, and I'm running for re-election to the board. Thank you for having me. I am a school teacher. I teach fourth grade in Daly City, and I'm a longtime educator and commissioner in San Francisco, having been re-elected in 2016 after spending 8 years as a principal in the Excelsior district. I think that the main issues that confront students and families in this valley are around stability in our schools. Staffing is one issue. We have a higher turnover rate in the southeast sector of San Francisco than any other part of the city. So we're losing our teachers, our paraeducators, our social workers, our principals even at a higher rate. And so that instability does not make things better for students. So one thing that we've been working on the last several years is to create teacher housing, educator housing for our teachers and for our paraeducators. We are creating 130 units right now, and then we hope to have over 1,500 units within the next 10 years so we can stabilize our teacher workforce and our paraeducator workforce and others that work with our students. One other thing that we've been doing is changing how we fund our schools. So we use what's called a weighted student formula to supplement funding for schools that serve students who have more challenges in their lives. So, for example, this last year and a half, we introduced a new policy that allows for more funding for students who are, for example, homeless, who are in foster care, whose families or parents might be incarcerated, or if they are residing in public housing. So we have much more to do. We have to raise more funds for our schools, for all of our schools, but particularly for schools and communities in Viz Valley and other southeast sector neighborhoods. And we're committed to doing that. As you know, Prop 15 on the California ballot is incredibly important to pass so that we can have more resources for our students and families, as well as Prop J on the local ballot, which is going to bring $50 million a year, primarily to be able to bring our teachers' salaries up to a living wage, so we can retain them. We're losing 500 to 700 teachers a year. So we have a lot more to do, and I'm committed to doing that work to serve all of our families. So thank you again.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jenny Lamb. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you why I'm running for school board and my passion for public education. I am running for re-election because I believe in child's right to a quality education and a safe learning environment. When we have strong public schools, we will have greater educational opportunities for our children. I've dedicated my career to working in community in nonprofit organizations for over 20 years. I spent nearly 7 years at Chinese for Affirmative Action. I'm proud of the work we did in Visitacion Valley, fighting for equity education, building leadership of immigrant parents to be advocates in their children's education at SF Unified, and building multiracial alliances in the community. As an SF Unified parent myself, I know the difficulties parents are facing right now. It's a challenging time, and we must work together to find the best solutions that prioritizes our students. Visitacion Valley is home to a very diverse community. This neighborhood is filled with programs including schools, community organizations, churches, daycares, parks, food banks, and community resources. Many people may have never been to the neighborhood or know much about it. Viz Valley is a special and beautiful community. The negative stigma and bias about this community is that it may be dangerous and unsafe. In relation to education, our Black, Latinx, Pacific Islander, children or English learners, and students in special education and low-income children are at risk of falling further behind other students because of the socioeconomic and racial disparities in San Francisco, which will be further exacerbated by COVID-19. In my 2 years of serving on the school board, I have a track record of bringing people together and making systemic change. From approving a budget that keeps funding at school sites, stabilizing resources, services, and instruction for students, to passing critical groundbreaking resolutions policies while on the school board, including equity studies, humanizing learning experiences for all students, in support of Black lives in SF Unified, and the protection of students and families against unnecessary reliance on police for discipline and behavior, to increase mental health services where young people are designing and leading their programs. COVID has further elevated the need for San Francisco public schools and the city to commit to build out community school models for all schools. I will aim to address these inequalities by gradual return to school and ensure the safety and health of our students, families, educators, and staff. Number 2, commit to continuous learning and improvements with distance learning and blended learning during the pandemic. Third, identify and call for additional federal, state, and local funding resources to support these efforts. The school district cannot do it on its own. We need to provide additional support for our Southeast schools. We not only need to provide academic resources for students in the Southeast, but also social and emotional resources. I will continue to fight for equity for our students, families, and educators. They are counting on us, and together we can make meaningful changes in the school district. I'd be honored to receive your support, learn more about my campaign, and join our team at jennylam.org. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for letting me share my campaign with you all. I'm sorry that we are not able to do a live forum, but still grateful to be able to speak with you all virtually. My name is Hanzo. I'm running for a seat on the San Francisco City College Board of Trustees, and I'm running because it was access to education that changed my family's life. I immigrated to the United States when I was 6 years old. My mom, who's a college professor herself, grew up poor in the city of Lanzhou in Gansu, China, and she was the first in her family to go to college. And it was on a whim that she applied to a graduate program here in the States, got in, and because of that, my dad and I and my 2 grandparents were able to come to this country. The first couple of years, the 5 of us shared a 1-bedroom apartment. My parents took the bedroom, my grandparents and I shared the living room, and like a lot of immigrant families here in San Francisco, it was my grandparents who took care of me while my dad worked to pay the rent and my mom focused on her degree. I spent my entire education in the public school system. I still remember the first day of school. My mom taught me 2 words, bathroom and hello, put me on the bus and sent me on my way. So I owe where I am today to our public schools. And since graduating from college, I've dedicated my career to working with API students and families, and really working to bridge the gap between Black, Brown, and API communities. My first job was at Asian Law Caucus, where I worked to bring services to low-income API seniors, undocumented youths, as well as incarcerated immigrants. And as executive director of the San Francisco Democratic Party, I staffed the committee to develop a Black agenda. And currently in City Hall as an aide for Supervisor Haney, I've been working to make sure that students and families are connected to city services, especially during this pandemic. City College has always been a place where people turn to in times like this. It's particularly important for working class and immigrant communities, and it has to be there for those who have been hit hardest by the shutdown, by this virus. I think, Viz Valley, I do not get to work with the community during my day job, but we, in District 6, have very similar communities that are underserved, that have a lot of public housing. We have a lot of immigrant families. I know in Viz Valley there's a huge number of API Chinese families there. And it's a part of the city that continually gets neglected. It doesn't get adequate public transportation. We're seeing empty commercial corridors. And I think City College can play a huge role in helping to bring services to that community and revitalizing that community. I will work, especially with the Southeast campus and the other campuses to make sure that there's accessibility for Viz Valley residents post-pandemic. And I want to make sure that, as much as City College is going to be a central part of the city's recovery, it is a central part of Visitacion Valley as it recovers from this pandemic. Thank you.
I'm Alan Wong, and I'm running for College Board to ensure that it serves working and immigrant families. I'm proud to be endorsed by the San Francisco Democratic Party, San Francisco Labor Council, Speaker Pelosi, Senator Feinstein, Assembly Members Phil Ting and David Chu, all the supervisors, and all 6 City College trustees that are making endorsements. I'm also supported by AFT Local 2121 and SEIU Local 1021, representing college teachers and classified staff. I was born and raised in San Francisco, and my entire family went to City College. When my dad was laid off from his factory job, he went to the City College Culinary Program, which helped him become a union hotel cook at the Grand Hyatt on Stockton Street and support my family as a sole provider for 2 decades. The training my dad received enabled my family to afford housing in the Sunset and have health care. As a teenager, going to Lincoln High and later UC San Diego, I took City College classes with a low-income tuition waiver. Those classes helped me graduate from UC San Diego when I was just 19 years old. As a City Hall Education Policy Advisor, I worked to draft and advance the legislation to secure free City College for the next decade. I also expanded City College into the Sunset by working with City College, SFUSD, and local nonprofits. Finally, I spent a year writing the City College Workforce Education and Recovery Fund legislation to ensure that we provide jobs for our working families during COVID-19. Today, my dad has been laid off like many other service sector workers. City College is a place of hope and opportunity where my dad was able to start a new career. I'm running so City College can once again be that place where miraculous things can happen for working families like my own. It is my opinion that Visitacion Valley and our southeastern communities are often forgotten and overlooked when it comes to distribution of resources. We need to support the Southeast and get people long-term and career track jobs that can sustain a livelihood and a family. We also need to close the opportunity and achievement gap for Black and Brown students so that they can have pathways to college. Finally, we need to have pathways such as ESL classes for our monolingual and immigrant communities to find good jobs. I helped create workforce programs at City College and was a leader in writing the City College Workforce Education and Recovery Fund, legislation that would bolster City College's workforce programs and help unemployed workers like my dad find good quality jobs. But that's not enough. I'm also committed to investing in the Southeast so that your community gets its fair share of resources from the college. Secondly, I work to expand high school dual enrollment programs to high school students in my neighborhood through partnering up with SFUSD and local nonprofits. These classes allow high school students to take college coursework and give them a pathway to higher education and a leg up on their college applications. I would like to expand these course offerings in all our communities to help young people succeed and see themselves as college students. Finally, it is my commitment to champion wraparound services to support student retention and direct support for student needs, such as resource centers, tutoring, counseling, and transportation. Thank you.